In the brief instance before the transition between entropy and extus, I was hoping that I would get Godzilla and Anguirus back. As the board appeared, I saw that my wish was half granted. I had Godzilla back, but no Anguirus. I would have preferred both, but despite Anguirus' neat abilities, I would have chosen Godzilla regardless. If I had to pick between the two. Extus had two different colored temples, white and pink, a pyramid, and what looked to be modern buildings, and two other icons I couldn't figure out at the time. The new bosses were Kumonga Gorosaurus and not Ghidorah, whom I was dreading to see, let alone fight. With Godzilla back, I was excited again, and eager to explore, yet still cautious. I went to the quiz level first, just as before. This time, Face's questions were more random than ever. Do elephants breathe? Yes. Weird face number 2. Have you ever been molested by a family member? No. Weird face number 6. Have you ever raped anyone? No. Weird face number 8. Is green your favorite color? No. Weird face number 10. Is the computer the pinnacle of modern technology? Yes. Weird face number 4. Are you a tough guy? Yes. Weird face number 12. Can you fly? No. Weird face number 9. Can you stand on your head? Yes. Weird face number 7. Do you hate raccoons? No. Confused. Do you feel blame? No. Weird face number 11. Would you like a new monster? Yes. Surprised. Will you miss me? Yes. Sad. I was happy that I was getting a new monster, but that last question bothered me. Will you miss me? Is Face referring to when I finished the game? I thought since the revelation of the game's truly otherworldly nature, I wasn't sure what to think of Face. Or anything else in the game. But something about that last statement gave me a genuine feeling of sadness from Face. As I was thinking about this, the game had gone back to the board. I had a new monster, but I had no idea who it was supposed to be. The sprite had a slight resemblance to Rodan, but it had a head that was totally off. I moved this mysterious newcomer to a white temple icon and started the level. When I started the level, this screen appeared with the text, "Find the gem," presumably instructions for beating the level. After I got my first look at my new playable monster, a hairy dark blue creature with bat wings and a skull-like face named Solomon. I also found my path blocked by a beam of light and a small pillar with a plate on it. I figured that this beam of light was blocking the exit, so I had to find the gem and drop it on the plate to deactivate the beam. How exactly I was going to do that, I didn't know. But there wasn't anything in the original game that required you to find an item to beat a level. I had to find out when I obtained the gem. The only direction I had to go was left, so on I proceeded. Solomon was an interesting monster, to say the least. He was capable of both flight and a heat beam, both of which were proven to be very useful. He also could kick and slash with his wings, but he couldn't duck. The White Temple's music was a vocalizing choir, or a video game approximation of such. It's hard to describe. But it had a very holy sound to it. It wasn't long before I started to run into a wave of strange new enemies, but they did little to stop me. I ran past them while slashing and didn't take much damage, or any at all. There was a pause between each enemy. After you had killed about 10, there wouldn't be any for about a minute. Then the next wave would appear. After 5 minutes, I noticed holes in the floor and the ceiling. Guillotine-mouthed creatures were rapidly flying up and down these crevices. So I had to time my jumps carefully, because I didn't know if I'd get another shot at this. Luckily, I managed to get through without a scratch. I'm just lucky, I guess. After that, I found myself at the end of the hallway, facing some kind of mini-boss monster. It moved fast and had some kind of projectile that shot out in 4 directions, but I killed it quite easily using Solomon's heat beam. When the battle was over, I had the gem, which was inside the creature's head. I found that I could pick up and hold the gem by walking over and holding down B. I made the long trek back to the start, deposited the gem on the plate, which deactivated the beam. When I left the stage, I was shown what was probably the strangest quirk related to the Solomon monster. Every time you complete a stage or defeat a boss with Solomon, this screen would appear. I have no idea what still the best 1973 means. Neither the date nor the phrase had any meaning or significance to me that I can think of. And I had spent a lot of time thinking about it. The next level I played was one of the levels I call Bronze Pyramids. I used Godzilla and found that he had been leveled up to 12 since I last played as him in Dementia. The Bronze Pyramids were fairly normal as far as these levels could go, but the visuals were quite interesting, almost unusually colorful and lively. The music had a fittingly Egyptian style to it. It was slow and mysterious sounding. I strolled through the level fighting off various enemies. None were too difficult, although the ants could be a pain if you ran into too many at once. My favorite enemy was this giant reptile I encountered halfway through. At the end of the level, I came across a giant pyramid, and I engaged in yet another mini-boss fight. Although this one was a bit different, because I had to fight two monsters at the same time. Individually, I have dealt with them easily, but fighting both of them at once was challenging. But I sped things up by tricking one of the twin beasts into barbecuing his brother by jumping when he used his flame breath. After defeating the twin monsters, I noticed something strange after returning to the board. I was now able to move my piece anywhere on the board without limits. Normally, Godzilla could only go two spaces each turn, while Mothra could move 4. I wanted to try out Solomon some more, so I moved his piece to one of the brown pillar icons with colored dots and started the level. When I got to the level, I then realized what the level icon represented. Totem poles. I was greeted by 2 of them right at the beginning. The music had a Native American sound to it. It seemed to be using the same instruments as the Entropy Forest. It was noticeably different, but just as foreboding. I walked around for 3 minutes. with nothing else in sight besides the totem poles. I didn't realize it until then, but I wasn't expecting another level with nothing alive in it. After all the activity and entropy, walking by all those multicolored faces, this unnerving level left me feeling like I was being watched. Only about 10 minutes after I started extus, I was already halfway through. After getting back from the totem pole level, I tried out one of the TV screens to see how strange they were this time. Even stranger than before, apparently. The music was the Uranus theme. I switched back to Godzilla to play another level. And this level was quite a surprise. It was a normal city level. The colors were gloomy, but even still it was quite a shock. This was the kind of level I would expect to see in a Godzilla game. And I was kind of mad that I didn't get to play it earlier. The music was the Earth theme. I found it strange that a level fitting a Godzilla game would show up this late, but there was no point crying over spilt milk, I suppose. I moved Solomon over to a grayish-green icon, which turned out to be a giant high-tech laboratory of some sort. Lots of mechanical drones in this level, but Solomon cleared through them, just like in the White Temple, just like the White Temple enemies. The music was a gritty industrial beat. There was also a strange flying cyborg enemy, which was also annoying because it would fly away when you jumped to attack it. Also, some interest were these large stasis tanks holding some kind of monster inside. As you would guess, sometimes the monsters awaken and shatter through the glass. I tried to get past the stasis tanks as fast as possible, because the monsters inside proved to be vicious little bastards upon release. At the end of the level was an elevator, which I used to go down to the bottom level where the exit was. Along the way, I was shot by security drones. I couldn't leave the elevator, so the only defense I had was the heat beam. The last level type was the simple thing I call the Heart Temple. Nothing but a big hallway filled with floating enemies shaped like human hearts. They're incapable of causing you damage, so what you So what you do is run through the levels, smashing as many as you can to get all the health power-ups. One run through these levels would let the life meter back up to full. I would greatly appreciate these levels later. The Heart Temple's music reminded me of a circus tune. It had an overly cheerful sound to it, which gave the level a really weird feeling. Having seen all the level types, I chose to fight Gorosaurus using Solomon. The music for this fight was Gizora's theme. It was during this fight I realized that Solomon is overpowered. A single well-aimed slash can take down as many as 4 of the enemy's life bars. Due to this, the fight was over very quickly. Gorosaurus had no projectile attacks or anything else that could match Solomon's deadly claws. But he kept the fight going long enough to see if Gorosaurus would use his iconic kangaroo kick. I was greatly pleased when he did. Even though I knew Solomon was my fighting ace, I used Godzilla to battle Kumonga. Just for variety. I briefly considered using Mothra, but of course Godzilla won out. Kumonga was also a simple opponent. No heat beams or anything. He attacks by jumping on you, stabbing you with his mandibles, and also using his signature webbing stream to paralyze you. Once you get webbed, Kumonga will sometimes take the opportunity to attack you. But it's mostly a way to buy some time, like Azora backing you in the corner until the time runs out. His theme was Hedorah's theme. Gorosaurus and Kumonga were defeated. I was at the end of Extus. Before I fought Not Ghidorah, there was something I had to do. I wasn't expecting much from it, but for documentation's sake, I took a look at the TV screen. This was what it was. I don't think there ever was much reason behind these TV screens. If I were to guess, I'd say some random uncontrolled manifestation of the cartridge's abilities. Or maybe it all makes perfect sense to this game. Who knows? Anyway, Mr. Fawcett's theme was the Saturn music. It was time for the opponent I had been dreading, Not Ghidorah. Although I had gained courage with Solomon's attack advantages, I was still nervous. And just as I started the fight, I was immediately confused. My opponent was not Ghidorah. I defeated the imposter with a few strikes. Then Not Mogira appeared. then it made sense. In order to get to Not Ghidorah, I had to battle all the previous replacements first. And battle them I did. I tore my way through them all until I finally made it to Not Ghidorah, who was a Dorat. Once I stopped laughing, I destroyed him with only 2 slashes. The music stopped, and I thought I was going back to the board, but the battle wasn't over yet. The real fight was against the Chimera, a monstrous hybrid of all the replacement beasts. This was by far the most difficult boss yet. Every attack of his would cut down whole life bars per use, while attacks against him were greatly weakened. Solomon's Slash, for example, was now lucky to take away 1/2 of a life bar. During this battle, I gained a great appreciation for 2 things: the boss fight time limit and the heart temple. Had it not been for those things, I might never have beaten this boss. To take down this behemoth, I came up with a strategy. I would switch between Godzilla and Solomon as one began to get seriously low on health. I would take them through the heart temple while fighting the Chimera with the other. I should count my blessings that Chimera didn't regain health that was lost. A very interesting thing about Chimera was that the colored sections on his body corresponded to his different body parts. So each body part effectively had its own life meter. The head was invincible as long as the other parts were present, and would always be the last part to destroy. In addition to being difficult, it was also the longest fight so far. I tried to remember how many times I got taken out of the fight by the timer, but I lost count around 13. Eventually, I had destroyed all components but the head, which now flew around on its own at an incredible speed. Chimera fought well, but I was extremely determined, and once he was reduced to a head, he no longer had the power to defeat Solomon. so I heat beamed him into oblivion. And then the chimera was no more. I was exhausted after that drawn-out fight, and worried that might affect my performance in the End World Chase level. The headquarters icon was replaced, but not by the Helpy's face, but instead it was a crucifix. I was completely stunned. I wasn't excited about seeing the Helpy's icon again, but if there was only one good thing about those levels, it's that they were predictable. I had a basic idea as to of what to expect, but now here I was at the end, and the icon was completely different. What did it mean? And why a crucifix? It made me very uneasy. I attempted to start the level with Solomon, but couldn't. I got this notice that simply stated, Solomon can't enter here. It didn't say why, but I think maybe it has to do with Solomon's demonic appearance. Since Solomon was out of the question, I went with Godzilla instead. Once I saw the level, the crucifix made sense. The level was a graveyard. I was still on edge, thinking this was some sort of trick. The last level had always involved running from the demonic beast, and I wasn't going to be fooled into thinking this would be any different. So I started out running, but after a minute without interruption, I slowed down. It was during this time that the music caught my attention. I know it sounded familiar when I heard it, but it took me a while before I recognized it. It was an 8-bit rendition of Prayer for Peace from the first Godzilla film. A very sad and powerful song, even in this form. At 2 minutes into the level, I encountered something that I wasn't sure how to react to. My first instinct was to run, but this blue statuesque creature simply floated in place. I felt compelled to just stare at it for a time. Since this was a grave, it was floating over a chapel. I guessed that it was some kind of angel watching over the deceased. It gave me a strange but warm feeling. I wouldn't say happy, but I felt that I was at peace somehow. I had never seen anything like this before, yet it seemed familiar to me. Just as I was going to leave, the Hell Beast appeared, and its presence warped the music into a terrifying, distorted screeching and transformed the level, desecrating the tombstones, and the new ground appeared, composed of blood-soaked bodies. I could feel my heart now beating out of control. I had no chance of escape with the monster that close. It lunged for the kill, but the angel got in its way. The demon roared and started clawing through the angel's legs, and tears of blood streamed from its eyes. I wanted to save the angel, but there was nothing I could do. I had to honor its sacrifice and run. And so I ran through the hellish landscape as fast as I could. The beast soon caught up with me, still swallowing the body of the angel, whose legs it had torn off. And this sight made my terror change into anger. I now found myself hating this horrible monster. There was no doubt in my mind that it was pure evil, and I wanted it to die. When I got to the end, I remember how it responded to my inside trance. I spoke to it and said, "You're going to pay." This was its response. I had no idea how it would follow up on that threat. And nothing could have prepared me for the horrors of the final world. Zenith.